In the vast expanse of the galaxy where empires rise and fall like waves upon cosmic shores, there exists a truth that even the most advanced civilizations struggle to understand: the depths of a parent's love. When the Zephyrian Empire, masters of genetic perfection and technological supremacy, first encountered humanity, they dismissed us as primitive mammals driven by base emotions. They could not comprehend how creatures who live such brief lives could possess such fierce devotion to their offspring. But on the crystalline world of HFY Prime, in the shadow of the Imperial Palace, one moment would shatter everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. A moment when a human mother's love would challenge the very foundations of an empire that had ruled for millennia. This is the story of Captain Sarah Chen, a human diplomat's wife who became something far more extraordinary. This is the story of how one act of pure instinctive love would echo across star systems and change the fate of two species forever. Prepare yourself for a tale that will remind you why, in a universe full of advanced beings and impossible technologies, humanity's greatest strength has always been the one thing that no alien mind can truly replicate: our capacity to love without limit, to sacrifice, and to protect what matters most, even when facing impossible odds. The transport ship Harmony's Edge descended through the pearl-white atmosphere of HFY Prime like a metal teardrop falling through liquid starlight. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport, watching the impossible architecture of the Zephyrian capital city rise from the crystalline surface below. Spires of living diamond twisted skyward, their surfaces rippling with colors that had no names in human language. "First time seeing a Zephyrian world?" asked Ambassador Marcus Chen, her husband of 12 years, as he adjusted his formal diplomatic attire. The midnight blue fabric seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, a gift from their hosts that supposedly honored human preferences for primitive dark colors. After 3 years of marriage to a career diplomat, she had grown accustomed to alien worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 17 star systems and claimed to be the pinnacle of evolutionary achievement. Looking at their capital, she almost believed it. "Remember?" Marcus said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're here as observers only. This is Emma's first diplomatic mission, and I want her to see how peaceful negotiations work." Sarah glanced toward the passenger area where their 8-year-old daughter Emma sat reading a datapad, her dark hair falling across her face in the same way Sarah's had at that age. The girl was completely absorbed in a story about ancient Earth explorers, oblivious to the historical significance of this moment. This was the first formal diplomatic exchange between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire, a chance to establish trade relations that could benefit both species for generations. The ship shuddered as it touched down on the landing platform. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the welcoming committee approaching. The Zephyrians moved with an unsettling grace, their tall, slender forms gliding rather than walking. Their skin had the translucent quality of polished crystal, and their large, multifaceted eyes reflected the ambient light in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked, appearing beside her parents with the sudden materialization that only children seemed capable of. "A little," Sarah admitted, crouching to Emma's level. "But that's normal when you're meeting new people for the first time." Emma nodded solemnly. At 8, she had already visited 4 different worlds and met representatives of 3 alien species. She possessed the adaptability that made humans such successful explorers, coupled with a child's natural curiosity about everything around her. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and the Chen family stepped onto the platform. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth normal, making Sarah feel as though she might float away with each step. The air tasted of ozone and something sweet that reminded her of vanilla. The lead Zephyrian approached with measured steps. Sarah estimated the being stood nearly 7 feet tall, with arms that seemed too long for its torso and fingers that ended in what looked like crystalline claws. When it spoke, its voice had a musical quality that seemed to resonate directly in their bones. "Welcome, humans, to HFY Prime. I am High Counselor Zethvar, first voice of the Inner Circle. We greet you in the spirit of peaceful exchange." Marcus stepped forward and executed the formal bow they had practiced during the 3-week journey. High Counselor, I am Ambassador Marcus Chen of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. This is my wife Sarah and our daughter Emma. We are honored by your invitation and grateful for this opportunity to establish understanding between our peoples. Zethvar's multifaceted eyes shifted to study Sarah and Emma. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as that alien gaze lingered on her daughter. There was something calculating in that look, something that made her maternal instincts stir uneasily. Indeed, Zethvar said, we are particularly interested in observing your young. Our research indicates that human offspring develop differently than those of other species we have encountered. The Princess Queen herself wishes to meet the child. Emma stepped forward with the fearlessness of youth. Princess Queen? That sounds like something from my stories. Zethvar's expression shifted in what Sarah thought might be amusement. Your young one is bold. Yes, child, her radiance Lyrithis is both Princess of the Blood and Queen of the Realm, heir to the Crystal Throne and ruler of 7 systems. She is also mother to the next generation of our kind. As they spoke, a procession approached from the main city. Sarah had never seen anything so magnificent or alien. The Princess Queen rode in what could only be described as a floating crystalline palanquin, surrounded by guards whose armor seemed to be grown rather than forged. The entire procession moved without sound, gliding over the platform's surface like ghosts made of light. The Princess Queen herself was breathtaking in an utterly inhuman way. Where the other Zephyrians had translucent skin, hers seemed to contain actual light, shifting and flowing beneath the surface like captured aurora. Her eyes were larger than those of her subjects, and when she looked at Emma, Sarah saw something that transcended species barriers, the unmistakable gaze of a mother evaluating another mother's child. The palanquin settled to the platform, and Princess Queen Lyrithis stepped down with fluid grace. She wore robes that seemed to be cut from solidified starlight and a crown that appeared to be a living thing of crystal and energy. Ambassador Chen, her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Welcome to our world. We have prepared accommodations that should suit your biological requirements. Marcus bowed again. Your Majesty honors us with your personal greeting. We rarely encounter species that bring their young to diplomatic functions. Your daughter is fascinating. Emma, showing none of the intimidation that Sarah felt, stepped forward and performed a perfect curtsy that she had learned from historical videos.
Your Majesty, my name is Emma Chen.
Thank you for letting us visit your beautiful world. The Princess Queen's expression shifted again, and this time Sarah was certain she saw genuine surprise. Such manners from one so young. Tell me, child, what do you think of our city? It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Emma replied honestly. It looks like someone built a fairy tale. Lyrithis looked to Sarah. Your offspring speaks truth without calculation. This is unusual among the species we have encountered. Children see the world differently than adults, Sarah replied carefully. Emma hasn't learned to hide what she really thinks yet. We shall discuss this further during your stay. For now, High Counselor Zethvar will escort you to your quarters. Tomorrow we begin the formal negotiations. As they followed their guide toward the city, Sarah noticed that several of the Zephyrian guards were studying Emma with the same calculating look she had seen from Zethvar. Something about their attention made her uneasy, though she couldn't put her finger on why. The guest quarters were magnificent, carved from a single massive crystal that had been hollowed out and shaped into comfortable living spaces. The walls glowed with soft, warm light that seemed to respond to their presence, brightening when they entered and dimming when they moved away. That evening, as they dined on foods that had been carefully prepared to meet human nutritional needs, Marcus reviewed his notes for the next day's negotiations. What did you think of them? He asked Sarah, as Emma played with a puzzle made of shifting light patterns that one of their hosts had given her. They're intelligent, obviously advanced. Sarah replied, but there's something about the way they look at Emma that makes me uncomfortable. Marcus looked up from his datapad. What do you mean? It's hard to explain. You know how some people look at children like they're small adults? The Zephyrians look at Emma like she's, I don't know, A specimen, maybe. They're scientists, Sarah. Everything is a specimen to them. Besides, this is exactly the kind of cultural exchange we're here to facilitate. They're curious about human development, and we can learn from their advanced child-rearing techniques. Sarah nodded, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. She watched Emma playing with the light puzzle, the child's face illuminated by the shifting colors, and felt a premonition she couldn't shake. The next morning brought the first formal negotiation session. The Chen family was escorted to a magnificent chamber deep within the Crystal Palace where Princess Queen Lyrathas waited with her advisors. The room itself was a marvel of engineering, its walls alive with flowing patterns that seemed to respond to the emotional undercurrents of the conversation. Marcus presented humanity's initial proposals, sharing of medical technology, establishment of trade routes. The Zephyrians listened with polite attention, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's light in hypnotic patterns. When Marcus finished his presentation, Princess Queen Lyrathas rose from her crystalline throne. "Your proposals have merit, Ambassador Chen. However, we have a proposal of our own." The walls of the chamber darkened, and holographic displays materialized, showing detailed biological scans. Sarah realized with growing horror that she was looking at incredibly detailed analyses of human physiology, including genetic markers that should have been impossible to obtain without invasive procedures. "We have been studying your species for some time," the Princess Queen continued. "Your reproductive biology is unique. Unlike our kind who reproduce through careful genetic selection and artificial enhancement, humans create offspring through what can only be described as, yet somehow this chaos produces remarkable adaptability and creativity." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, those scans appear to show classified biological data. How did you obtain them?" "The point is, we believe that crossbreeding between our species could produce offspring with unprecedented capabilities. We propose a breeding program." The words hung in the air like ice crystals. Sarah felt her blood turn cold as she understood the implications. "You want to use humans for breeding experiments," Marcus said carefully. "We prefer to think of it as genetic collaboration," High Counselor Zethvar interjected. "Selected humans would be honored guests here on Zirian Prime, contributing to a new form of life that could benefit both our species." Sarah's eyes darted to Emma, who was sitting quietly in a chair designed for smaller beings, still playing with her light puzzle and apparently oblivious to the conversation. The calculating looks from the Zephyrians suddenly made perfect sense. They hadn't invited humanity here to negotiate trade agreements. They had invited them here to evaluate breeding stock. "That's not possible," Marcus said firmly. "Human reproductive rights are considered sacred in our society. We don't trade our children or arrange forced breeding programs." Princess Queen Lyrathas tilted her head in a gesture that somehow managed to convey both understanding and dismissal. "Perhaps forced is too strong a word. We would simply require a few volunteers to remain here and participate in our genetic research. In exchange, we would share our most advanced technologies with your people." "And if we refuse?" Marcus asked. "Then I'm afraid formal relations between our peoples would be complicated." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The Zephyrian Empire controlled strategic shipping routes that humanity desperately needed access to. Refusal could mean economic isolation for Earth's expanding colonies. "We'll need time to consider your proposal," Marcus said diplomatically. "Of course. Take all the time you need." The Princess Queen's multifaceted eyes fixed on Emma. "Perhaps your daughter would like to see our nursery while you deliberate. Our young ones are quite remarkable." Sarah felt every maternal instinct she possessed suddenly screaming warnings. "I think Emma would prefer to stay with us." "Nonsense," Princess Queen Lyrathas said with a musical laugh. "Children should meet other children. It's the basis of all future understanding." Before either parent could object, two Zephyrian guards stepped forward. They moved with the fluid grace that Sarah had noticed before, but now that grace seemed predatory rather than elegant. "Really, there's no need to fear," the Princess Queen continued. "Your daughter will be perfectly safe. Our nursery is one of the most secure areas of the palace. Emma looked up from her puzzle, sensing the tension in the room, even if she didn't understand its source. Mom? Dad? Sarah started to move toward her daughter, but found her path blocked by another guard. The being didn't touch her, but its presence made clear that movement in Emma's direction would not be permitted. "This is not acceptable," Marcus said, his diplomatic training warring with his paternal instincts. "We insist that our daughter remain with us." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Princess Queen Lyrithis replied. "You see, we've already begun preliminary genetic assessments of your offspring. The results are quite promising. Young Emma carries genetic markers that could prove invaluable to our research." The pieces finally clicked together in Sarah's mind with horrible clarity. The Zephyrians hadn't invited humanity here to negotiate. They had lured them here to acquire breeding subjects, starting with the most genetically promising individuals they could find. Emma's youth made her an ideal candidate for long-term genetic manipulation. "You're talking about kidnapping our daughter," Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet. "Such an ugly word," High Counselor Zethvar said. "We prefer to think of it as securing the future of both our species." The guards moved then, their crystalline armor reflecting the chamber's light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Emma cried out as alien hands reached for her, and in that moment, Sarah Chen made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. She moved with the speed and fury of a mother protecting her young, launching herself between Emma and the guards with a primal scream that made the crystal walls themselves ring in harmonics. The light puzzle fell from Emma's hands, shattering into 1,000 fragments of color as Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter and faced the approaching Zephyrians with the fearless rage of a human parent pushed beyond all limits. "You want her?" Sarah snarled, her voice carrying the promise of violence that even these advanced beings could recognize. "You go through me first." The Princess Queen's expression shifted to something that might have been surprise. In all their calculations about human behavior, they had apparently underestimated the ferocity of maternal love. And in that crystalline chamber, as alien guards hesitated before the fury of a human mother, the first seeds of an interstellar incident began to grow. The silence in the crystalline chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sarah Chen stood with her arms wrapped protectively around Emma, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. The Zephyrian guards had frozen in place, their multifaceted eyes reflecting uncertainty as they processed this unexpected development. Princess Queen Lyrithis studied Sarah with a fascination that felt clinical and predatory. "Curious. Our behavioral models predicted that humans would respond to superior force with submission, as do most species. Yet you place yourself between your offspring and certain destruction." "That's what mothers do," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We protect our children." "Always?" Even when such protection is futile. Sarah's grip on Emma tightened. She could feel her daughter trembling, but the girl remained silent, instinctively understanding that this was not the time for questions. "Especially then." The Princess Queen tilted her head in that unnervingly alien gesture. "High Counselor Zethvar, what do your analysis protocols suggest for this scenario?" The tall Zephyrian consulted a device that appeared to be grown from the same crystalline material as their armor. Biological imperatives suggest the parent will fight regardless of odds. However, human physical capabilities are insufficient to pose a meaningful threat to our security personnel. Marcus stepped forward carefully, his diplomatic training evident in every movement. "Your Majesty, surely we can find a solution that doesn't involve taking children from their families. Perhaps we could arrange for voluntary participants in your research program." "The genetic markers we require are not commonly found in your adult population," the Princess Queen replied without taking her gaze off Sarah. "They appear most prominently in your young and fade as your species matures. We need subjects before this biological window closes." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "How long have you been studying us? We first became aware of humanity 7 of your years ago when your expansion into the Kepler system brought you to our attention. Since then, we have conducted extensive research into your biology, psychology, and social structures." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. 7 years ago, Emma had been barely a year old. The Zephyrians hadn't just discovered humanity recently. They had been planning this from the beginning. Every diplomatic contact, every cultural exchange, every seemingly innocent communication had been part of a larger strategy to acquire what they needed. "You've been watching our children," she said, the accusation clear in her voice. "Observing," Princess Queen Lyrithis corrected. "Your species has a saying about studying one's enemies. We prefer to study our future partners." Emma finally spoke, her small voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I don't want to be your partner. I want to go home." The Princess Queen's expression shifted, and for a moment Sarah saw something almost like sympathy in those alien features. "Child, you do not understand the honor we offer. You would be the first of a new kind of being, combining the best traits of both our species." "I don't care," Emma replied with the absolute certainty that only children possessed. "I want my mom and dad." One of the guards made a gesture toward a weapon that hung from its crystalline belt, but the Princess Queen raised a hand to stop it. Violence against the child would damage the genetic material. "We must extract her carefully." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, each one more desperate than the last. They were deep inside the Zephyrian palace, surrounded by beings whose technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed. Their ship was under guard, their communications were certainly monitored, and even if they could somehow escape this chamber, where would they go? But as she held Emma close, feeling the warm weight of her daughter's trust, Sarah realized that none of that mattered. She was a mother, and her child was threatened. Everything else was irrelevant. "Tell me something," Sarah said to the Princess Queen. "Do you have children?" The question seemed to catch the alien ruler off guard. "I am the mother of the next generation, as I mentioned. 3 offspring, each genetically optimized for their eventual roles in our society." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I mean, did you carry them? Did you feel them grow inside you? Did you stay awake nights when they were sick? Did you teach them to walk and watch them take their first steps?" The Princess Queen's expression became puzzled. "Our reproductive process is more efficient. Genetic material is combined in controlled environments. The offspring develop in specialized chambers until they reach maturity." "Then you don't understand," Sarah said with sudden clarity. "You don't understand what you're trying to take from us." She turned to address the entire room, her voice growing stronger as she found her purpose. "Emma isn't just genetic material to us. She's not a research subject or a breeding prospect. She's our daughter. She's every bedtime story, every scraped knee we've kissed better, every proud moment we've shared watching her grow into the amazing person she's becoming." Marcus stepped closer, adding his presence to the protective barrier around Emma. "Sarah's right. Human children aren't commodities. They're individuals with rights and freedoms that no one has the authority to trade away." High Counselor Zephyr made a dismissive gesture. "Emotional attachments to offspring are inefficient. They cloud judgment and prevent optimal resource allocation. Your species would benefit from adopting our more logical approach. Our emotional attachments are what make us human," Sarah replied fiercely. "Take that away, and what do you have left? Empty genetic material with no soul." The Princess Queen studied Sarah with growing fascination. "Soul? Define this concept." Sarah struggled to find words for something that seemed so fundamental to human existence. It's the part of us that loves without logic. The part that would die for someone else without counting the cost. The part that makes a mother stand between her child and an army, even when she knows she can't win. Illogical. "Yes," Sarah agreed readily. "Completely illogical." And that's what makes it powerful. The chamber fell silent again as the Zephyrians processed this exchange. Sarah could almost see the calculations running behind their multifaceted eyes, trying to quantify something that couldn't be measured or analyzed. Princess Queen Lyrithis finally spoke. "Your perspective is unexpected. However, our need for genetic material remains unchanged. Perhaps we could offer alternative arrangements. You and your mate could remain here as well, serving as caretakers while your offspring participates in our research." "No," Sarah said without hesitation. Emma goes home with us, or we all stay here as your prisoners. But we stay together." The Princess Queen's posture shifted, and Sarah sensed frustration in the alien ruler's bearing. "You would condemn your entire species to genetic stagnation rather than allow one child to contribute to evolutionary advancement? I would protect my daughter from anyone who sees her as nothing more than raw material for their experiments," Sarah replied. "That's not condemnation, that's love." Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that held complete trust and growing understanding. "Mom, what's going to happen to us?" Sarah met her daughter's gaze and made another decision that would echo across star systems. "Whatever happens, sweetheart, we face it together. That's what families do." The Princess Queen gestured to her guards, who began advancing again. "Enough discussion. We will proceed with the extraction. Minimal force is authorized, but the child must not be harmed." Sarah felt time slow to a crawl as the guards approached. She could see Marcus tensing beside her, knew that he would fight despite the odds. She could feel Emma's small hand gripping her arm with desperate strength. And in that moment of crystalline clarity, Sarah remembered something that might make a difference. "Wait," she called out, causing the guards to pause. "You said you've been studying us for 7 years. Have you studied our history?" "Extensively," High Counselor Zephyr replied with obvious pride. "We have complete records of your species' development, including detailed analyses of your military capabilities and societal structures. Then you know what happens when someone threatens human children. Elaborate." Sarah straightened to her full height, still keeping Emma behind her. "Throughout human history, the one thing that has united our species more than any other is the protection of children. We've started wars over it, we've toppled governments over it, we've moved mountains and crossed oceans and sacrificed everything we had, all to keep our children safe. You think you can just take our daughter and continue negotiations with my husband as if nothing happened, but you're wrong. The moment you harm one hair on her head, the moment you separate her from her family, you won't be dealing with diplomats anymore. You'll be dealing with every human parent in the galaxy who understands that their children could be next." Marcus picked up the thread, his diplomatic mask slipping to reveal the steel beneath. "She's right. Take Emma. And this doesn't end with trade negotiations. It ends with humanity treating the Zephyrian Empire as an existential threat to our species' survival. Your military capabilities are primitive compared to ours," Princess Queen Lyraethus pointed out. "Our military capabilities aren't the problem," Sarah replied with a smile that held no warmth. "The problem is that you've apparently never encountered a species where ordinary citizens will gladly die to protect each other's children. You want a war with an entire species of parents who see you as child stealers." The chamber fell silent as the Zephyrians processed this information. Sarah could see the calculations running behind their eyes, but she could also see something else: uncertainty. For all their advanced technology and genetic optimization, they had apparently never encountered anything like human parental instinct. High Counselor Zephyr consulted his device again, his movements more agitated than before. "Your Majesty, their historical records do support these claims. Human conflicts involving perceived threats to offspring show unusual persistence and escalation patterns." Princess Queen Lyraethus studied the small family group with new attention. "You would truly risk interstellar war over one child?" "We wouldn't risk it," Sarah said quietly. "We would guarantee it." Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, are we going to fight them?" Sarah looked down at her daughter's trusting face and felt her resolve crystallize into something diamond hard. "No, sweetheart. We're going to show them something they've never seen before." "What's that?" "What it means to be human." The Princess Queen made a gesture and the guards stepped back slightly. "Explain this demonstration." Sarah took a deep breath and made the most important diplomatic speech of her life. "Your Majesty, you've studied our biology, our technology, our history, but you've missed the most important thing about humanity. We're not just a collection of individuals trying to survive. We're a family, all of us, connected by bonds you can't see or measure or replicate in your laboratories. This isn't just my daughter. She belongs to every human who has ever loved a child, who has ever stayed up all night with a sick baby, who has ever felt their heart break when their child was hurt. When you threaten her, you threaten all of us." Marcus stepped forward. "And that's why your breeding program would fail, even if we agreed to it. You can't create the genetic diversity you want through force or coercion. Human children thrive because they're loved unconditionally, because they're raised by parents who would die for them, because they grow up in communities that value their individual worth over their potential utility. Take that away," Sarah continued, "and what you'd produce wouldn't be human at all. It would be something else entirely, something that might have our genetics but would lack the soul that makes those genetics worth having." The Princess Queen was quiet for a long moment, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's light in patterns that seemed almost contemplative. "You present an interesting philosophical argument, however. Our needs remain unchanged. We require the genetic material your offspring represents." Sarah felt her last hope beginning to fade, but then Emma did something that changed everything. The 8-year-old stepped out from behind her mother's protective embrace and walked directly toward the towering alien ruler. "Emma, no!" Sarah started forward, but her daughter held up a small hand. "It's okay, Mom," Emma said with the fearless confidence of childhood. "I want to talk to her." Emma stopped just out of reach of the Princess Queen's crystalline claws and looked up at the alien ruler with curious eyes. "You said you have 3 children, right? Do you love them?" The question hung in the air like a crystal suspended in light. The Princess Queen's expression shifted through several configurations before settling on something that might have been confusion. "Define love in this context," she said finally. Emma frowned in concentration. "It's like when you would do anything to make sure they're happy and safe, when seeing them smile makes you feel warm inside. When you want them to grow up to be good people, not because someone told you to want that, but because they're yours and you want the best for them." The chamber was absolutely silent as everyone waited for the Princess Queen's response. When it came, her voice had a quality that Sarah had never heard before, something almost vulnerable. "We ensure their optimal development. We provide resources for their growth. We prepare them for their designated roles in society." "But do you love them?" Emma persisted. The Princess Queen looked at the small human child for a long moment, then at Sarah, then at Marcus. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of uncertainty that seemed to surprise even her own advisors. "Do not know how to answer that question." And in that moment, Sarah realized that the Princess Queen wasn't just a cold alien intelligence seeking genetic material. She was a mother who had been raised in a society that had forgotten how to love its children, and meeting Emma was forcing her to confront the emptiness of that existence. The tide of the encounter was about to turn, though none of them realized it yet. In the space between a child's innocent question and an alien mother's honest answer, the seeds of something unprecedented began to grow. The admission hung in the crystalline air like a confession that had never been meant to escape. Princess Queen Lyrithus stood motionless, her multifaceted eyes fixed on Emma's small, upturned face, and Sarah could see something fracturing in the alien ruler's carefully controlled demeanor. High Counselor Zethvar stepped forward, his crystalline armor chiming softly with each movement. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should proceed with the extraction. The philosophical implications of human emotional structures are not relevant to our immediate objectives." But the Princess Queen held up a hand for silence, never taking her gaze from Emma. "Child, show me this love you speak of. Demonstrate how it functions." Emma glanced back at her parents, receiving encouraging nods from both, then walked even closer to the towering alien ruler. Without hesitation, she reached out and gently touched the Princess Queen's crystalline hand with her own small fingers. The Princess Queen recoiled as if struck, her entire form shimmering with waves of light that Sarah realized were expressions of shock. The touch had lasted less than a second, but its impact was clearly profound. "What did you do?" the Princess Queen whispered, staring at her hand where Emma had touched it. Emma looked puzzled. "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that touching doesn't have to hurt. My mom touches me like that all the time when I'm scared or sad or when she just wants to tell me she loves me. Sarah watched in amazement as something she had never expected to see rippled across the Princess Queen's features. Tears. Not human tears, but drops of liquid light that traced paths down the alien ruler's crystalline cheeks. "I do not understand," the Princess Queen said, her voice breaking in ways that suggested Zephyrian vocal cords were not designed for the emotions she was experiencing. "Your touch conveyed no information, served no functional purpose, yet it created sensations I lack terms to describe." "That's what love feels like," Emma explained with the patient tone of a child teaching an adult something obvious. "It doesn't have to have a reason. It just is." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, both recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. The most powerful ruler in this part of the galaxy was having her first experience with unconditional affection, taught by an 8-year-old human child who had no idea how extraordinary this moment was. The Princess Queen turned her attention to Sarah. "Is this how you interact with your offspring, this purposeless touching and emotional expression?" "Every day," Sarah replied softly. "Multiple times every day. It's how we show love, how we provide comfort, how we build the bonds that make us family." "Show me." The request was so unexpected that Sarah almost asked for clarification, but the need in the Princess Queen's voice was unmistakable, and Sarah realized that she was being asked to demonstrate the most fundamental aspect of human parenting to a being who had never experienced it. Sarah knelt beside Emma and pulled her daughter into a warm embrace, resting her cheek against Emma's hair. "This is a hug," she explained. "We use it to show affection, to provide comfort when someone is upset, or sometimes just because we want to be close to someone we love." The Princess Queen watched intently, her multifaceted eyes tracking every movement and expression. "The child appears to derive pleasure from this contact, but what benefit do you gain?" "Joy, the satisfaction of knowing that Emma feels safe and loved." These are inefficient emotional states. They provide no evolutionary advantage. Emma piped up from within her mother's arms. "They make life worth living, though. What's the point of being alive if you can't be happy?" The question seemed to strike the Princess Queen like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, catching herself against her crystalline throne, and for a moment Sarah thought the alien ruler might collapse entirely. High Counselor Zethvar moved to support his leader, but the Princess Queen waved him away. "Your offspring asks questions that our greatest philosophers have failed to address. What is the point of existence without joy?" "We call it living instead of just surviving," Marcus said carefully. "That's why our children are so important to us. They represent not just the continuation of our species, but the continuation of love, of hope, of everything that makes existence meaningful." The Princess Queen's gaze swept across the chamber, taking in her advisors and guards with new eyes. "Look at us," she said, and Sarah heard genuine anguish in her voice. "Look at what we have become. We have achieved technological mastery, genetic perfection, dominion over star systems, yet we have forgotten the purpose of it all." "Your Majesty," Zethvar began, but the Princess Queen cut him off with a gesture. "Silence. I am remembering something from before my ascension to the throne." She turned back to Emma. "Child, may I attempt this embracing behavior you demonstrated?" Emma nodded and walked over to the towering alien ruler. The Princess Queen knelt awkwardly, clearly unfamiliar with the posture, and hesitantly extended her arms. Emma stepped into the embrace without fear, showing the same trust she would give to any adult who had earned her confidence. What followed was the most extraordinary sight Sarah had ever witnessed. The Princess Queen, ruler of 17 star systems, master of genetic sciences beyond human comprehension, learned how to hug a child. Her movements were tentative at first, uncertain, but as Emma relaxed against her, something profound shifted in the alien ruler's demeanor. The tears of light came faster now, and the Princess Queen's voice was barely a whisper. "I remember. Before the throne, before the responsibilities, before the protocols of rule, I remember holding my first offspring when she emerged from the growth chamber. I felt something, but my advisors told me it was weakness, inefficiency. They taught me to suppress such responses. They were wrong. Sarah said gently. What you felt was love. And love isn't weakness, it's the strongest force in the universe. The Princess Queen looked up, still holding Emma carefully in her alien embrace. I have made a terrible mistake. We all have in our pursuit of perfection. We have forgotten what it means to be perfect for someone who loves us unconditionally. High Counselor Zethvar and the other advisors were clearly disturbed by this turn of events. Your Majesty, these emotional responses are compromising your judgment. Perhaps we should remove the humans and proceed with the original plan. No, the Princess Queen's voice carried an authority that made the crystal walls ring with harmonics. The original plan was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes humanity valuable. We cannot steal their children and expect to gain their strength. Their strength comes from the bonds of love that connect them. She gently released Emma and rose to her full height. High Counselor, summon my offspring to the palace immediately. All 3 of them. Your Majesty, they are currently in advanced training protocols. Summon them now. The Princess Queen's tone brooked no argument and prepared chambers for the Chen family as honored guests, not prisoners. Sarah felt a wave of relief so intense that her knees nearly buckled. But the Princess Queen wasn't finished. Furthermore, send word to our intelligence networks. All surveillance of human children is to cease immediately. We will not study them like specimens. If we wish to understand humanity, we will ask them directly. The chamber erupted in protests from the advisors, but the Princess Queen silenced them with a gesture that sent ripples of light through the air. I am Princess Queen by right of birth and conquest. My word is law throughout this empire. Are there any who would challenge this? The silence that followed was absolute. Emma tugged on the Princess Queen's flowing robes. Your Majesty, can I ask you something? Of course, child. You may ask me anything. What are your children's names? I'd like to meet them properly. The question seemed to catch the Princess Queen off guard once again. She was quiet for a long moment before responding. They are designated by their intended functions. First offspring is trained for military command. Second offspring specializes in scientific research. Third offspring is being prepared for diplomatic roles. But what do you call them when you want them to know you love them? The Princess Queen's expression crumbled. I do not call them anything. They are summoned by electronic signal when required. Emma frowned. That's not right. Everyone should have a name that makes them feel special. What names do you like? I do not understand the question. When you look at your children, what words make you feel happy inside? The Princess Queen closed her multifaceted eyes and stood silent for nearly a full minute. When she opened them again, her voice was soft with wonder. Varath Ness. Giantess Calathus. She paused. I do not know where those names came from. They appeared in my mind, unbidden. Those are their real names, Emma said with absolute certainty. The names you gave them with your heart before anyone told you it was wrong. Sarah watched in amazement as the Princess Queen began to truly weep, her tears of light falling like stars to shatter against the crystal floor. What have we all done? Marcus stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, it's not too late. Love isn't something you lose forever. It's something you can rediscover and rebuild. But how? How do I repair years of emotional absence? How do I undo the training that taught them to suppress what you call love? Sarah found herself moving without conscious thought, crossing the chamber to stand beside the grieving alien mother, the same way any parent does, one day at a time, one hug at a time, one moment of presence and attention at a time. She hesitated, then reached out to gently touch the Princess Queen's crystalline shoulder. And maybe you let my daughter teach them how to play. The Princess Queen looked at Sarah with an expression of desperate hope. You would do this? After what I attempted? You're a mother who lost her way, Sarah replied. Every parent makes mistakes. The important thing is recognizing them and trying to do better. High Counselor Zethvar stepped forward, his posture radiating disapproval. Your Majesty, this emotional display is highly irregular. The breeding program represents years of planning and resource investment. Surely you cannot abandon such vital research because of momentary sentiment. The Princess Queen's expression hardened, and for the first time since Emma's simple question had begun this transformation, Sarah saw the full authority of an interstellar ruler manifest. Counselor, you speak of children as breeding stock and love as momentary sentiment. Tell me, do you have offspring? 3. Your Majesty, all currently in optimization protocols. What are their designations? Research Unit 7, Military Unit 1230. The Princess Queen stared at her chief advisor with something approaching horror. You reduce your own children to numbers and functions, and you wonder why our species grows more isolated and hollow with each generation. This ends now. We will not steal children from their families. We will not treat sentient beings as experimental subjects, and we will begin the difficult work of remembering what it means to love our own offspring. The guards and advisors exchanged uncertain glances, clearly struggling with orders that contradicted everything their society had taught them. Emma walked over to High Counselor Zethvar and looked up at him with curious eyes. Do you miss your children? The question was so unexpected and innocent that Zethvar actually stumbled backward. Miss them? They are assigned to their proper developmental programs. Missing them would imply inefficient emotional attachment. But do you ever want to see them smile? Do you ever wonder if they're happy? For the first time since Sarah had met him, the High Counselor's composed expression cracked. Behind his multifaceted eyes, Sarah saw something that might have been pain. Such thoughts are discouraged. They interfere with optimal decision-making. Emma nodded seriously. My mom says being sad sometimes means you love someone. Maybe you miss them more than you think you do. And as the High Counselor's crystalline composure finally shattered completely, Sarah realized that Emma wasn't just teaching the Princess Queen about love. She was awakening an entire species to emotions they had forgotten they possessed. The revolution had begun with a child's question and a mother's touch. Now it would spread through the crystal corridors of power like light breaking through a prism, illuminating truths that had been hidden in darkness for too long. The next few hours transformed the Crystal Palace in ways that centuries of technological advancement never could. Word of the Princess Queen's emotional awakening spread through the corridors like wildfire, carried by servants and guards who had witnessed something they lacked proper words to describe. Sarah sat in what had once been a formal reception chamber, now converted to something resembling a human family room, watching Emma teach a group of young Zephyrian attendants how to play a simple clapping game. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just hours earlier. Alien children, if they could be called that, laughing with genuine joy as they struggled to coordinate their crystalline fingers with the rhythm of an Earth nursery rhyme. The transformation is remarkable, Princess Queen Lyrithus said, settling onto a crystalline bench beside Sarah. The alien ruler had changed as well, her formal robes replaced with simpler garments that allowed for easier movement. More significantly, her entire bearing had shifted from regal distance to something approaching maternal warmth. "Children adapt quickly," Sarah replied, watching Emma patiently correct a young Zephyrian's hand position. "They don't carry the weight of expectations that adults do. They just accept love when it's offered and give it back freely." The Princess Queen's multifaceted eyes tracked every movement of the playing children. I have been watching them for 2 hours and I still do not fully understand the purpose of this activity, yet they appear to derive genuine satisfaction from it. The purpose is joy, Sarah explained. Not everything has to serve a function beyond making people happy. Marcus approached from across the chamber where he had been engaged in discussions with a group of Zephyrian administrators who were clearly struggling to process new concepts about child-rearing and family dynamics. "Any word from your children?" George Hethys' expression grew troubled. "Varithis, Ginthis, and Kalothis will arrive within the hour. However, I am uncertain about how to proceed. They have been trained since birth to suppress emotional responses. I fear they may not understand what I am attempting to convey." Emma looked up from her game. "Don't worry. When they see you're different, they'll want to be different too. Children always copy their parents." The Princess Queen's tears of light began again. But I have not been a parent to them. I have been a supervisor and administrator of their development protocols. How does one begin to love children who have been taught that love is weakness? Era considered the question carefully. It was one thing to awaken dormant emotions in an adult who could understand the concepts intellectually. It was another entirely to bridge years of emotional conditioning in young minds that had been shaped to suppress their deepest needs. Start small, she suggested finally. Use their names, their real names, not their designations. Touch them gently. Show interest in their thoughts and feelings, not just their achievements. But what if they reject such overtures? What if the conditioning has been too thorough? Emma abandoned her game and walked over to the anxious alien mother. They won't reject you. Deep down, every child wants to be loved. They just might not remember how to show it at first. The Princess Queen knelt to Emma's level, a gesture that was becoming more natural with each repetition. How did you become so wise, little one? I'm not wise, Emma said with a child's honesty. I just know what it feels like to be loved, so I can tell when someone else is missing it. High Counselor Zethvar entered the chamber at that moment, his usual composed demeanor replaced by something approaching distress. Your Majesty, there have been developments throughout the Empire. Reports are coming in from multiple systems about unusual behavior among our population. The Princess Queen rose, her expression concerned. Explain? Parents are requesting to see their offspring outside of scheduled interaction periods. Workers are leaving their posts to engage in non-productive activities with their young. Some have even begun using what they claim are personal designations for their children rather than official identifiers. Sarah felt a mixture of amazement and concern. The awakening is spreading. It appears so, Zethvar confirmed, consulting his crystalline device. Our behavioral monitoring systems are detecting emotional fluctuations throughout the population. Social stability indices are showing unprecedented variation. The Princess Queen was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Are these fluctuations causing harm? That is difficult to determine. Productivity has decreased in some sectors, but other metrics show improvement. Reports of interpersonal conflicts have decreased significantly, and there are indications of increased satisfaction among workers in child-rearing facilities. Marcus stepped forward. It sounds like your people are remembering how to be families instead of just reproductive units. The implications are staggering, Zethvar said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been fear. If this emotional awakening continues to spread, it could fundamentally alter our entire social structure. Good, the Princess Queen said firmly. Perhaps it is time our social structure served our people rather than suppressing them. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and Zethvar consulted his device again. Your Majesty, your offspring have arrived. Sarah had watched this being face-down diplomatic crises and command an interstellar empire. But the prospect of reconnecting with her own children had reduced her to the same anxiety any human parent might feel. I do not know what to say to them, she whispered. Emma took the alien ruler's large hand in her small one. Just tell them you love them. Even if they don't understand what that means yet, they'll learn. The chamber's main entrance dilated to admit 3 young Zephyrians, each accompanied by what Sarah assumed were their supervisors or trainers. The newcomers moved with the same fluid grace as adult Zephyrians, but there was something different about them, a subtle hesitance in their movements that suggested uncertainty. The eldest was clearly female, standing almost as tall as an adult, but with features that still carried hints of youth. The middle child appeared more masculine, his crystalline skin showing patterns that Sarah hadn't seen on any of the adults. The youngest was small enough to be clearly identified as a child, her eyes larger than those of her siblings and somehow more expressive. All 3 stopped in perfect formation and executed formal bows toward their mother. First offspring reports for interaction, the eldest said in a voice that carried no emotion whatsoever. Second offspring acknowledges summons, the middle child added. Third offspring awaits instructions, the smallest concluded. The Princess Queen's expression crumbled as she faced the reality of what her society's conditioning had done to her children. They stood before her like perfectly programmed automata, showing no recognition of her as anything more than a superior officer. Sarah saw the alien mother's resolve begin to waver and knew that this moment would determine whether the emotional awakening could overcome years of systematic suppression. She was about to speak when Emma did something extraordinary. The 8-year-old human child walked directly up to the 3 young Zephyrians and smiled at them with the radiant warmth that only children could muster. "I'm Emma. What are your names?" The 3 siblings exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for this deviation from protocol. "We are designated by our functional roles," the eldest finally responded. "No, silly," Emma said with a giggle. "I mean your real names, the ones that make you feel special inside when someone says them." The youngest Zephyrian took a small step forward, her large eyes showing the first spark of genuine curiosity Sarah had seen from any of them. I do not understand the question. Your mom knows your real names. She told me earlier. Do you want to hear them?" The middle child's posture shifted slightly. "Our mother knows personal designations for us." "She knows lots of things about you," Emma continued confidently. "She just forgot how to tell you because everyone kept saying it wasn't important. But it is important, and she remembers now." The Princess Queen stepped forward slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. "Varates," she said softly, looking at her eldest daughter. "Jintes," she continued, turning to her son. "Kailathes," she finished, meeting the eyes of her youngest. The reaction was immediate and profound. All 3 young Zephyrians began to shimmer with the same tears of light that their mother had shed earlier, though they seemed confused by their own responses. "How do you know those sounds?" Varates whispered. "They appear in my dreams sometimes, but I was told they were meaningless neural artifacts." The Princess Queen knelt, bringing herself closer to her children's level. "They are your names, the names I whispered to you when you first emerged into this world, before I was taught that such sentimentality was inappropriate." Kailathes, the youngest, took a tentative step toward her mother. "The sounds they make me feel. I lack words for the sensation." "Safe?" Emma suggested. "Loved? Happy?" "Yes," Kailathes breathed, the word carrying wonder and recognition. "Those feelings. I thought they were malfunctions in my emotional processing systems." Sarah watched in amazement as the Princess Queen slowly extended her arms toward her children, mimicking the embracing gesture that Emma had taught her. The movement was hesitant, uncertain, but filled with desperate love. Would you allow me to hold you as I should have from the beginning?" The 3 young Zephyrians looked at each other, then at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. Kailathes moved first, stepping into her mother's embrace with the cautious wonder of someone experiencing miracle for the first time. Jintes followed, then Varates, until the Princess Queen held all 3 of her children in an awkward but genuine family embrace. The light tears fell freely from all 4 Zephyrians as they experienced the simple joy of physical affection for what might have been the first time in their lives. "This feeling," Varates said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder, "is this what the human child called love? This is love, and I am so sorry that I kept it from you for so long." Emma clapped her hands together in delight. "Now you're being a real family." High Counselor Zephyr had been watching the reunion with growing distress. "Your Majesty, this emotional display is being monitored by security systems throughout the palace. The footage is already spreading to other worlds. The implications for social stability—" "Let it spread," the Princess Queen said without releasing her children. "Let every parent in the Empire see what we have denied ourselves. Let them all remember what it means to love their young." Marcus stepped forward. "Your Majesty, my wife and daughter have given you a gift beyond price, but gifts like this come with responsibilities. Are you prepared for what happens next?" The Princess Queen looked at him over her children's heads. "Explain." "Love isn't just a feeling. It's a commitment to put someone else's well-being ahead of your own interests. It's making decisions based on what's best for your children, not what's most efficient for your empire." Sarah nodded. "And sometimes love means admitting when you've been wrong and working to make things right, even when it's difficult or costly." The Princess Queen was quiet for a long moment, still holding her children close. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of imperial authority combined with newfound maternal determination. High Counselor, prepare an empire-wide transmission. I will address all citizens simultaneously. Your Majesty, what do you intend to say? The Princess Queen looked at Emma, who gave her an encouraging smile. I intend to tell them the truth, that we have forgotten who we are in our pursuit of what we thought we should become, that our children are not assets to be optimized but souls to be cherished, and that starting today, the Zephyrian Empire will be a place where love is not just permitted but celebrated. Ginthus looked up at his mother. Will there be consequences for such a dramatic policy change? The Princess Queen smiled, the first truly joyful expression Sarah had seen from her. Yes, my son, there will be laughter in our homes. There will be parents who know their children's dreams and fears. There will be families who choose to spend time together not because it's scheduled, but because they want to. She paused, her voice growing stronger. And there will be a generation of young Zephyrians who grow up knowing they are loved unconditionally, not because of what they achieve, but because of who they are. As if in response to her words, Caelithess giggled, a sound of pure joy that rang through the crystalline chamber like music. It was the first time any of them had heard a Zephyrian child laugh, and the effect was transformative. Within hours, that sound would be broadcast across 17 star systems. Within days, it would spark a revolution of love that would reshape the greatest empire in the galaxy. But for now, in this moment, it was simply the laughter of a child who had just learned that her mother loved her. And sometimes, that's how the universe changes. One laugh, one hug, one act of love at a time. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station orbiting HFY Prime, watching shuttle after shuttle dock with families aboard. What had once been a sterile transfer point for official business had been converted into something unprecedented in galactic history, a cultural exchange center dedicated to teaching the art of family relationships. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. The Zephyrian Empire, which had once ruled through cold efficiency and genetic optimization, was learning to govern with love as its foundation. It hadn't been an easy transition, but it had been an extraordinary one. "Mom, look!" Emma called from across the observation lounge where she was playing a modified version of hide-and-seek with a group of young Zephyrians. The alien children's crystalline forms made them shimmer like living rainbows as they moved, but their laughter was purely universal in its joy. Sarah smiled, watching her daughter effortlessly bridge the gap between species that had seemed insurmountable just months ago. Emma had become something of a celebrity among the Zephyrians, though she remained blissfully unaware of her historical significance. To her, she was simply a child playing with friends who happened to look different than her. The integration continues to exceed all projections, Princess Queen Lyrithus said, joining Sarah at the observation window. The alien ruler had changed dramatically since their first meeting. Her formal bearing had softened into something approaching approachable warmth, though she still carried herself with unmistakable authority. "How are your people adapting?" Sarah asked. Lyrithus's multifaceted eyes reflected the light of the shuttles with what Sarah had learned to recognize as contentment, slowly but with growing enthusiasm. The initial resistance from our administrative class has largely disappeared as they begin to experience the benefits of emotional connection with their own offspring. She gestured toward a nearby seating area where High Counselor Zethvar sat reading a story to his youngest child, his formal demeanor completely abandoned in favor of animated voices for different characters. Even Zethvar has embraced the changes, though he still struggles to believe that productivity can actually increase when workers feel emotionally fulfilled. Marcus approached from the diplomatic quarter, carrying a stack of data tablets that represented the ongoing work of formalizing the new relationship between their species. "The latest reports from the colonial worlds are encouraging," he said. "Adoption rates for the new family interaction protocols are approaching 90% across all systems.